The rules must be followed.
They said the mall was quiet after midnight, but the rules weren't made to keep things out. They were made to keep something in.
An abandoned store, a cry from behind a locked dressing room, and a crumpled sheet of rules warning, never look back if the mannequins move. I used to believe the only danger in night shifts came from people. I was wrong. You're watching Echoes of Crime, where every story whispers the truth beneath the surface. I don't remember how many job applications I sent out before that call came in. Just that when my phone rang that blistering afternoon, I didn't hesitate. A night shift position had opened up at a rundown mall on the edge of town. Security guard, midnight to 6 a.m., one building, good pay, no customers. No alarms, no cops, just shadows. It sounded perfect. The interview was almost laughably short. Mr. Hensley, the manager, barely looked up from his desk. He asked if I had experience. I did, and then handed me a key and a printed schedule. But one thing stuck with me. Follow the rules, he said. It's not about protocol, it's about survival. I laughed, thinking it was a joke. He didn't. That same night, I showed up just before 11 p.m. The parking lot was a graveyard. A few dead cars lay abandoned under flickering lamps. The mall itself loomed like a sleeping beast, massive, breathless, silent. Every instinct told me to turn around. I didn't. I entered through the employee entrance. The security office was tucked in a corner of the back hall, dimly lit, lined with monitors that flickered with static more than footage. A standard laminated guide sat on the desk. Patrol times, camera rotation, emergency contacts. But just as I was settling in, someone knocked softly on the door behind me. He didn't introduce himself. Older man, janitor's uniform, pale hands, dull eyes. "You're the new guy," he said, more observation than question. "You're gonna need this." He handed me a sheet of paper, yellowed, crumpled, stained with something I didn't want to guess. "These aren't from the manager," he added. "These are the rules that matter." I unfolded it, and that's when the air in the room turned cold. Night shift survival rules. Rule 1, check the cameras every 15-30 minutes, but don't stare at them too long. Rule 2, never look directly at the mannequins after midnight. Rule 3, if you hear a child laughing in the play area, leave immediately. Rule 4, if the time ever moves backwards, get back to the security office without delay. I forced a laugh. "This is some kind of initiation prank." The janitor didn't smile. The last guard didn't listen, didn't last the night. I should have walked out right then, but I didn't. Section 2, continued narration. I stood there frozen, staring at the mannequin through the office doorway. It hadn't been like that before, I was sure of it. When I passed the clothing store earlier, they were arranged neatly in a triangle, facing the center display. Now one had shifted just slightly, enough to make you question your memory, enough to make your stomach tighten with something primal. It was now facing the hallway, facing me. I slammed the door shut, locked it. The cameras were quiet. The escalators still, the food court abandoned. My breathing echoed too loud in that tiny office, like I had to choke on each inhale to keep it from becoming a scream. Then I remembered what the janitor said, "Don't stare too long." I tore my eyes from the screen, blinking hard. My pupils burned from the strain, but something deeper hurt, something I couldn't explain. I glanced at the sheet again, that damned list. Why did it feel like the rules were watching me, waiting to be broken? I told myself to move. I had to patrol, that's what I was being paid for, just a job. I grabbed my flashlight and pushed the office door open. My shoes tapped against the tile floor, every step too loud, too isolated. Shadows loomed from every storefront. The glass windows were black mirrors. I avoided looking too closely at them. I didn't want to see my reflection, or worse, someone else's. As I passed the children's play area, something caught my eye, a flicker, a shift. I aimed the flashlight toward the miniature jungle gym. Plastic tunnels, foam mats. Brightly colored structures meant to feel welcoming in daylight now looked more like cages. Empty, silent, but I could have sworn something just moved inside. I inched closer, sweeping the light slowly across the rubber flooring. And then I heard it, laughter, a child, distant, echoing. Wrong, every hair on my neck stood up. Rule 3, if you hear a child laughing in the play area, leave immediately. I didn't need convincing. I backed away, quick. Not even bothering to turn around until I was halfway down the next hallway. That's when I heard it again. Not laughter this time, footsteps, heavy, uneven, plastic on tile. My blood froze, I didn't want to look. I remembered Rule 2, never look directly at the mannequins after midnight, but there it was, that same rhythmic thump, like someone dragging something dense, like a mannequin walking. I fought the instinct to run. Running meant panic. Panic meant mistakes. I moved fast but steady. Eyes forward, no glancing behind, not yet. The sound followed me, closer, louder, each scrape against the tile like a threat whispered under its breath. I turned the corner near the shoe store. Gone, the sound stopped. Silence flooded the hallway again, suffocating and unnatural. I reached for my walkie, then remembered this shift didn't come with backup. There was no one else, just me and the rules. Back in the office, I locked the door again and collapsed into the chair. I checked the monitors, nothing, still nothing. Then I noticed something, the escalator. It was moving, slowly, like it had just turned on by itself. I hadn't heard the sound from outside the office, but the camera showed it clearly, each step gliding upward into the darkness. I reached for the list again, my hands shaking. Rule 10. If you hear an escalator running, do not investigate. Watch the area on the cameras. I obeyed. I stared at the screen. That's when it appeared, a shape. Someone was riding the escalator upward, but it didn't move like a person. Its limbs jerked stiff like they were tied with invisible strings. Its face wasn't visible, just darkness, like the shadows themselves had grown a body. And then it turned toward the camera, toward me. The monitor hissed with static. The screen buzzed, the lights flickered. I snapped my eyes away. My pulse was deafening in my ears, and just like that, the escalator stopped. The screen cleared, nothing there, gone. I worked night shift at a mall. The rules weren't just for safety. Section 3, continued narration. I didn't sleep, I didn't blink. I just sat there back in the security office, fists clenched so tightly my knuckles turned white. I don't even remember how long I'd been watching the monitors. I only knew time was sliding, slipping through my hands like wet ash. The sheet of rules sat beside me like a Bible in a burning church. I unfolded it again, creased, stained, shaking, and read the next line. Rule 8, between 4:00 a.m. and 4:30 a.m. lock the door, do not open it, even if they knock, even if they sound familiar. I checked the clock, 3:57 a.m. My hand moved to the door lock instinctively. I didn't wait, I clicked it shut, pulled the deadbolt, slid the chair in front of the knob for good measure. Then I sat, and I waited at exactly 4:02. The knocking started, 3 sharp raps, nothing frantic, just confident, like whatever was on the other side already knew I was listening. I didn't move. Then a voice came through the door. Hey, it's me. It was the janitor. His tone was light, almost amused, like we were old friends meeting for a drink. Rough night, huh? He continued. Still think the rules are funny. I didn't answer, my pulse hammered in my throat. The monitors showed nothing. The hallway outside the office was empty, static-free, peaceful, but the knocking kept going, more insistent. Come on, he said. I can explain what's going on here. My body wanted to move. My hand even twitched toward the handle. But I remembered the rule. They might not be who you think they are. 4:13 a.m. the voice changed. Still the janitor's cadence, but slower, like something was imitating him, syllable by syllable. A bad recording on a worn-out tape. Cool and let me in. I stared at the camera again, still empty, and then, suddenly, he appeared on screen, right outside the door, not moving, not knocking, just standing. Staring directly into the lens, his mouth stretched into a smile too wide for his face, skin pale like wax, his eyes didn't blink, and then his form began to waver, like smoke losing shape. In a blink, he vanished. 4:31 a.m. silence returned like a drug. The air felt breathable again, but I didn't feel safe. I just felt watched, like the mall itself had been waiting for me to fail that test. I needed to move. My legs ached from being locked in place. My spine was stiff. I decided to walk a small loop outside the office, nothing big, just enough to shake off the weight. I stepped out, and there he was, the janitor, or at least I thought it was him. Standing at the end of the hallway, leaning against the wall casually, smiling, his face was softer now, familiar, tangible. Rough night, he said. I stared at him, jaw clenched. You followed the rules, didn't you? He asked, voice low. I nodded. Good, he said, and his smile faltered just slightly. That means you might make it. Might, I croaked. He tilted his head. There's more going on here than you realize. You'll either understand it or you won't. Either way, no one escapes. Then he turned and walked away, slow, deliberate. I followed, desperate for answers. I turned the same corner just seconds later, and he was gone. Not a footstep, not a sound, just stillness. That's when I heard it, a woman crying, soft, muffled, behind one of the dressing room doors in the store up ahead. I stopped cold. I didn't need the paper anymore. I had them memorized. Rule 9. If you hear someone crying in a dressing room, do not open the door. But the sound was human, so human. A sob, broken and raw, echoing down the hall. I stood frozen, torn between instinct and obedience. What if someone really was in trouble? What if the rules were part of the hallucination? What if all of this was? But then the crying grew louder, too loud, distorted, like a voice played through a broken speaker. I backed away, step by step. And then it stopped, instant, cut clean. I turned to go back to the office, and something flickered across the corner of the security camera in my hand. A figure, pale, hair over her face, hovering, not walking. She moved toward the dressing room, shoulders shaking in silence, waiting. I worked night shift at a mall, the rules weren't just for safety. Section 4, continued narration. The sound was unmistakable, crying right behind me. I didn't turn around, I didn't breathe. My body locked in place like something ancient had just slithered up behind my spine and laid a cold, invisible hand on the back of my neck. But I already knew what it was. Rule 9. If you hear crying in a dressing room, do not open the door. And worse, if the crying follows you, don't acknowledge it. I ran. I don't remember how far. I don't remember the turns I took. I only remember the sound fading with every step I took away from it, until silence swallowed the mall again like a curtain dropping at the end of a play no one clapped for. When I finally reached the office, I slammed the door behind me and locked it without thinking. My hands trembled as I collapsed into the chair, my chest heaving. I didn't know what time it was, didn't care. All I knew was that the shift wasn't over, not yet. I sat in front of the monitors, flipping between camera angles with shaking fingers. The hallways were empty, the escalators still, the play area untouched, but something felt wrong. Like I had missed something, and then I saw her, the woman. She was on the north hallway camera outside the dressing room, still hovering, still silent. Her arms hung at her sides like dead weight, fingers slightly curled. Her face was still hidden behind that curtain of dark, dripping hair, but now she was moving toward the security office. I blinked, checked another camera, and another. There she was again, closer, like she was skipping between feeds. Like the system itself couldn't keep up with her movements. I felt paralyzed, not with fear, but with inevitability, like I was part of something now. Some dark pattern carved into this building's bones long before I ever showed up. I reached for the list of rules like it was the only anchor keeping me from being swallowed. Rule 11, under no circumstances should you leave before your shift ends. If you do, you risk something following you out. I glanced at the clock, 5:28 a.m. almost there. 32 more minutes, I just had to wait, and then the knocking started again, but this time it wasn't sharp, it was slow, weak, like someone too tired to beg, a soft tap. Tap, tap on the office door, then came the voice, "Please, I need help." It was a woman, she sounded broken, barely audible. I didn't move, didn't even blink. The camera showed the hallway again empty, but the knocking continued. The voice got closer, sadder, "Please, I don't want to die here." I bit my lips so hard I tasted blood. Was it her, the woman from the dressing room, or was it something pretending? And then something changed. The monitors glitched, all of them. One by one they flickered and filled with static, except one, the feed from the north corridor. She was there, staring directly into the lens. I felt my heartbeat echo through the floor. Her face was still obscured, but I could feel her watching me, like she could see through the screen. Her mouth began to move, but no sound came out, just a slow, shuddering whisper of motion. I leaned closer, and then she smiled. Not a warm smile, something else, too wide, too still, something that had never belonged to a living person, and just as quickly as she appeared. She vanished, the screens returned to normal. The lights overhead stopped flickering, the mall quiet again. Too quiet, I checked the clock. 5:44 a.m., 16 minutes left. I could make it, just 16 minutes, or so I thought, until the intercom system turned on by itself, a crackle, then static, then children laughing. The sound of a playground in full chaos, swings creaking, little feet stomping, and laughter, so much laughter, too much. It came from every speaker in the building. I covered my ears, screaming for it to stop, but the sound just grew louder, warped, and distorted until it no longer sounded human at all. Then silence. I looked up, the cameras were all blank again, every single one, and the list of rules, it was gone. I worked night shift at a mall, the rules weren't just for safety. Section 5, continued narration. The rules were gone. 1 second they were in my hand, creased, stained, familiar. The next, gone like they had never existed. I tore the desk apart, checked the drawers, the floor, the trash bin. Nothing, but I remembered them, word for word. Every line burned into my brain like commandments carved in fire. And now, it felt like something was testing whether I remembered them well enough. 5:47 a.m., 13 minutes. That's what I kept repeating. 13 more minutes and I could leave, clock out, walk away. Pretend this night never happened. Pretend I hadn't seen what I saw, heard what I heard, but deep down I knew better. Because the rules were never about finishing the shift. They were about surviving it. I sat back down and faced the monitors. All of them were black, except one, camera 12. It showed a hallway I hadn't seen before, narrow, concrete, more like a basement tunnel than a part of the mall. The lights were dim, almost red, the walls sweat moisture, and at the far end of the hallway, just barely within frame. A door, metal, rusted, heavy. I hadn't seen that door before, but as I watched, something changed. The door began to open, not fast, not slow, just deliberate. The darkness behind it was too black, not just shadow and absence, a void, and then something stepped out. I don't know what I saw. My brain refused to process it. Tall. Slender, bones too sharp, limbs too long. Its movement was jerky, unnatural, like it didn't know how to walk like us. Its skin was the color of wet paper, veiny, translucent, and its face. No, it didn't have a face. Just an indentation, a suggestion of features that never fully formed. It stepped forward once and the screen glitched, stepped forward again and another monitor blinked to life. Camera 7, food court, there it was again, closer. Like it had jumped between feeds. Another step, camera 3, children's play area, closer, closer. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't bound by walls or time, it was coming for me. And it wasn't walking through the mall. It was walking through the cameras. I stood up, backing away from the desk. The air in the room grew thicker, heavy like syrup. My ears started ringing, pressure building in my skull like I was standing at the bottom of the ocean. 5:53 a.m., 7 minutes, I whispered to myself. 7 more minutes. And then all the monitors blinked. They lit up simultaneously, each one showing a different section of the mall. But the creature was on every screen. In every hallway, every store, every camera, like it had multiplied, or like it never had one form to begin with, and in every feed it was looking at the camera, looking at me. I ran, didn't think, didn't plan. Just sprinted out of the office like a cornered animal. I don't know why, maybe it was the pressure, maybe it was instinct, but I ran into the mall, dark, endless, waiting. Somewhere in the distance, the escalator began to move again. I didn't look, I turned the opposite direction toward the emergency exit. I knew Rule 11, do not leave before your shift ends or something will follow you, but right now that felt like a safer gamble, because whatever was inside. It already knew I was here. I reached the metal double doors, pushed, locked. I tried the fire exit, no alarm, just dead weight. I wasn't locked out of escape, I was locked in. That's when I felt it, cold air behind me. I turned slowly, reluctantly, nothing, empty hallway, except the janitor's cart just sitting there, silent, but the hallway was too narrow. I would have seen someone pushing it if they had left it there. Hadn't I? I approached slowly. Hands trembling, inside the cart, nothing, mop, bleach, cloths, and a crumpled piece of paper. My stomach dropped, I reached for it, unfolded it with fingers that barely worked. It was the list, but something was wrong. Some of the rules were different now. The ink had smudged in parts, other lines had been crossed out, rewritten, and one new line had been added at the very bottom. Rule 12, the building has learned your name, it will remember you. The building has learned your name, it will remember you. That line echoed in my skull like a whisper I couldn't stop hearing, not just written on the page, inside me now. I didn't remember telling anyone my name, not the janitor. Not even Mr. Hensley, I wasn't sure I ever did, but somehow the mall knew, and that changed everything. I was no longer a stranger passing through. I was a marked participant. The rules weren't just guidelines, they were a dialogue. A contract, and now I was no longer reading them. They were reading me. I clutched the paper like a lifeline and backed away from the janitor's cart. Every instinct told me to burn it, tear it apart. But something deeper, a voice I hadn't heard before, told me, you need it. It's the only thing keeping you alive. 5:56 a.m., 4 minutes. I could survive 4 minutes, unless time changed again, unless the mall bent it. I turned to head back to the office, praying the path was still there, that the layout hadn't shifted like it sometimes seemed to. That's when I saw the mirrors, a dozen of them, lining both sides of the corridor, all from the adjacent fashion boutique. They must have fallen or been dragged into the hall. Rule 4, avoid looking into the mirrors of the restroom. But this wasn't the restroom, and the rule had never mentioned this. Still, I averted my eyes. I moved like a blind man. One hand grazing the wall, the other clenching the paper. But I saw it just for a moment, my reflection, and it moved differently. Not much, barely perceptible. But it turned left when I turned right, smiled when I didn't. And its eyes, they were waiting, not watching, waiting for me to see what it had become. I spun and bolted down the hallway, every step clanging against tile, echoing back at me like taunts. The air grew heavier, denser, hotter. The walls closed in. 5:57 a.m., 3 minutes, just 3. I reached the office door. The lock was unlocked. I had locked it earlier. I was sure of it. Inside, the room was dark, the monitors on. But every screen displayed only one thing now, me, from different angles, different moments, a recording of the entire night, me opening the dressing room door, me staring too long at the cameras. Me breaking every rule I swore I'd follow, except I hadn't broken all of them, had I? Unless the mall had edited the footage to make it look like I had. I stepped toward the screen, hypnotized. My mouth moved in the video. I couldn't remember saying those words. On screen, my face leaned close to the camera and whispered, "You don't leave, you become." Suddenly every monitor shut off, silence, then A knock, soft, direct. I turned slowly. The office door was closed again, but this time I hadn't touched it, and from the other side a voice, "Your shift is over." Mr. Hensley, exactly like before, same tone, same timing. 6:00 a.m. I checked my watch. Then the wall clock, then the phone. All three showed different times. 5:59, 6:24, 44. My breath caught in my throat. I backed away from the door, but the handle started to turn slowly, insistently. I grabbed the rule sheet again. There was a new one, scratched at the bottom in smeared red ink. Rule 13, if your shift ends but the mall doesn't acknowledge it, you're still inside. I stared at the handle twisting itself open and realized with full clarity. I had never been hired, I had been invited. I had never been hired. That truth struck me like ice water down my spine. No contract, no paperwork. No ID badge, just a rushed interview, a key handed over, a list of rules that updated themselves. No one hires you like that, they lure you, and now the door handle was turning, slowly, smoothly, like it knew I was listening. I backed away from the office door until my legs hit the edge of the desk. Then the voice came again. "Your shift is over, time to go home." Mr. Hensley's voice, but it didn't carry like a real voice. It floated like a recording trapped in a hallway too long. I turned toward the cameras. All screens now showed the same image, the security office from the inside, from a corner that didn't exist. I was being watched from inside the room I was standing in. That's when the lights began to dim one by one, not flicker, fade, like the building was falling asleep. I whispered, "I never started this shift, not officially." The rule sheet was in my hand again, its texture strange now, like skin. I read the last two rules aloud like an incantation. Rule 12, the building has learned your name. Rule 13, if the shift ends but the mall doesn't acknowledge it, you're still inside. There was no rule about what happens when you acknowledge it back, so I said it. I know you're alive. Everything stopped, the lights, the buzz. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Then click, the office door opened by itself. Darkness spilled in thick as ink, but I didn't run. Somehow I knew this was the moment, the test beneath all the other tests. You can't survive this place by hiding. You survive it by understanding what it wants, so I walked through the door, into the mall, into whatever was waiting. It was no longer the same place. The stores were warped. Shelves grew like ribs from the floor. Escalators twisted into themselves like broken spines. The mannequins had gathered in clusters, not posed but assembled, staring in the same direction, facing the same hallway, so I followed their gaze. That hallway had never existed before. It wasn't on the map, it wasn't on the cameras. It was narrow, organic, almost like a vein pulsing between the walls. The floor was soft beneath my feet, like worn carpet soaked in something old and warm. I walked for seconds, then minutes, then maybe hours. Time didn't work the same here, and neither did sound. I could hear my heartbeat, but it wasn't in my chest anymore. It was somewhere behind me, following. Then at the end of the hallway I saw it, a mirror, tall, covered in dust. I approached it slowly, and when I wiped the glass clean, I didn't see myself. I saw the janitor, standing in the same spot, same posture, but his expression was hollow. He looked tired, empty. He lifted a hand, pressed it to the glass, and whispered, "Now do you understand?" I didn't respond because the answer was clear. He had taken the shift before me, followed the rules, survived the night, and now he was part of the building. The reflection faded, replaced by my own image, but my eyes weren't blinking anymore, and behind me, a mannequin stood closer than it should have been. I turned to run, but the mall was gone. Only the mirror remained, and in its surface, a new rule began to write itself in blood-red script. Rule 14, you cannot leave until someone takes your place. The letters were still forming on the mirror, thick, red, wet. I didn't want to know what they were written in, but the message was clear. I had made it to the end of my shift, but I wasn't leaving, not without a replacement. I took a step back from the mirror. It didn't feel like glass anymore. It felt warm, like skin over bone. A pulse beat behind the frame, slow and heavy, like the mall itself had a heartbeat, and I was standing inside its chest. I turned to run, but the hallway was gone, only the mirror. Behind it I could still see my reflection, but it no longer followed my movements. It blinked when I didn't, tilted its head at the wrong angles, and behind it the mannequin, still but closer, breathing. I slammed my fist into the glass. It didn't crack, it rippled like water. My reflection reached forward, touched the surface from the other side, and then it smiled, but I didn't. Somewhere behind me a door creaked open. The sound wasn't part of the mall, it was distant. Like something real, then I heard it, soft footsteps, familiar ones, and a voice. "Hello, I'm here for the night shift interview." My blood ran cold. Someone was here, someone new. I turned and ran toward the sound, through impossible corridors that twisted and pulsed like living things. My body felt heavy, like I was wading through a dream thick with smoke, but the voice guided me, young, hopeful. Just like mine had been, I found the source. A teenager, maybe 20, nervous, holding a phone, looking around like he was already regretting walking in. I wanted to scream, "Get out, turn around." But my mouth wouldn't open. And then I saw it, the janitor standing beside the boy, grinning, holding out a piece of paper, old, wrinkled, the rules. The boy reached for it. I lunged, tried to grab his hand, but it passed through me. No sound, no contact. I was no longer present. I was a shadow, something between a memory and a ghost, and the boy, he was already being chosen. The mall had found its next one, and I felt the weight lift, just slightly. The walls seemed to breathe again. The mannequins turned away, the escalator fell silent. The mirror began to crack. I stumbled backward, the hallway collapsing into ash around me. The lights went out one by one. And in the silence that followed, I felt something loosen from my chest, like a thread snapping. 1 a.m. the real time. I heard birds outside, wind, cars. I was back in the office, alone, breathing. The list of rules sat on the desk in front of me, unwritten, blank, waiting, and I knew. It would soon rewrite itself, for him. The new hire, the next shift. I didn't wait. I stood, walked toward the exit. This time it opened easily. The early morning light hit my face like a rebirth. The mall stood behind me, tall and still, a tomb wearing a storefront smile. I didn't look back, not once. I drove away without thinking, and I've never returned. But last week someone slipped a flyer under my apartment door. Now hiring, night security, quiet shift, easy pay. Same font, same layout, same mall, but I never gave them my address. I stared at the flyer. Crumpled, slightly damp, the corners stained with something that looked too dark to be coffee. Now hiring, night security, quiet shift, easy pay. Same layout, same wording, same phone number, no return address. But the part that chilled me wasn't the flyer itself. It was where I found it, slipped under my apartment door, and I'd never told anyone where I lived. At first I laughed, bitter, broken. Maybe this is a joke, I said to myself. Maybe someone from the mall tracked me down. But that voice, the one you get deep down, the one that knows things before your brain catches up, was already whispering, "The mall never lost you, it just let you go for now." I threw the flyer away, burned it the next morning just in case. But that night I dreamed of mirrors again, and in one of them I wasn't alone. The reflection smiled. Behind it, a mannequin waved slowly. And a new rule was scrawled across the glass in something pulsing. Rule 15, if you leave, stay gone, but don't forget us. We never forget you. I tried to move on, got another job, daytime, loud, people everywhere. I moved apartments, changed my number, left no forwarding address. Still, the signs crept in. A camera in a store flickering as I walked by. A mannequin in a thrift shop posed exactly like the one that moved that night. A child laughing near a grocery store toy aisle, even though the aisle was empty. I began keeping the lights on, stopped using mirrors after dark, unplugged my apartment's security system, too many static bursts on the feed. And then last Thursday I passed a convenience store. Nothing strange, except the janitor was there, outside, leaning against the side wall, smoking, same uniform, same pale eyes. He didn't smile. Just stared at me with something that wasn't hate but wasn't welcome either. He flicked the cigarette, turned, and walked inside. I didn't follow, but I knew what it meant. They hadn't forgotten me, and worse, they were still watching. Maybe I passed some kind of test. Maybe I'd followed just enough rules to stay alive, but not enough to fully leave. Whatever the case, the mall had opened a door inside me. And doors, real ones, don't close once something steps through. The phone calls started again. No caller ID, no sound on the other end, just air, sometimes breathing, sometimes crying, sometimes laughter too high-pitched to be human. I keep the list of rules now, hand-copied from memory. I've rewritten it dozens of times. Some parts vanish overnight. Other lines appear where there were none the day before. The last one that showed up, Rule 16. You can escape the mall, but not what it awakened. Last night I woke up at 3:33 a.m. My bedroom door was open, and on my desk one security camera feed, live, grainy, showing my hallway from the inside. There was movement on the screen, slow, deliberate, a figure stepping into view, too tall, too quiet, wearing my uniform, and it had no face. The figure on the screen stood still, motionless, wearing my uniform, my shoes. Even the patch I had torn off during that first night, but its face. There wasn't one, just smooth, pale skin stretched too tight over bone. No eyes, no mouth, just presence. I blinked. The feed glitched once, then returned. Now the figure was closer to the camera, still not moving, still staring with the absence of eyes. I backed away from the desk, and as I did, the monitor turned off on its own. But I already knew what it meant. It wasn't in the hallway anymore. It was here. I didn't sleep that night, didn't even try. By morning, the footage was gone. No device, no camera, nothing on my phone, just silence, but on my nightstand. The list, my own handwriting, with one final addition. Rule 17, you were never meant to survive. You were meant to replace. It all makes sense now. Every rule wasn't to protect me from danger. They were steps in a ritual to bind me to the mall, to change me. The longer I followed the rules, the deeper I sank. The closer I came to becoming the thing that watches from the cameras. That waits behind the mirror. That knocks on the office door at 1 a.m. It almost worked, but I left. Somehow I slipped through, and that's why it's not over, because I broke the chain, and the mall doesn't like loose ends. A week ago I got an envelope in the mail. No name, no stamp. Inside was a single photo, black and white, grainy. Taken from a security camera feed. It showed a man in a uniform standing in front of a mirror. The angle was wide, high, just like the ones in the office. The man's head was tilted, as if listening to something. And in the mirror's reflection, I wasn't looking at myself, I was looking at you. I know now what I have to do. I know why the list came back. It needs a new name. Someone who sees the ad, takes the shift, follows the rules, just enough. Long enough to make them all feel fed again, because it's not a place. It's a system, a machine that runs on fear, memory, and sacrifice. And I was just a cog. You might be next, so if you ever see the ad. Quiet job, easy pay. Night security, one building, one shift. Think hard, because there's one rule I didn't write down, the first rule. The one no one tells you, the one that started it all. Rule 0, if you see the ad. You've already been chosen. I burned the rules, I moved states, I changed everything. But this morning my neighbor got a flyer. And he just asked me one thing. Hey, have you ever worked security at a mall?